Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Stevens, editor of Short Term Rentals, and welcome to our 2023 Predictions webinar, sponsored by Abode Worldwide and Lavanda. Today, I'm excited to reveal my 6 forecasts for the short-term rental industry in 2023, with the help of 3 industry experts who will meet shortly, ahead of a publication of our predictions article on shorttermrentals.com on Thursday. Let's first watch this short video from our first webinar sponsor, Abode Worldwide. So a big thank you to Abode Worldwide and Jessica for sponsoring this webinar today. And our second session sponsor is Lavanda, which is a leading tech platform powering flexible rentals for multifamily real estate and student accommodation. You can see a little bit more information there as well, so I thoroughly recommend that you catch up with them during and after this webinar too. Last week, we held an exclusive trends event in London for our partners and clients, in which we gave a sneak preview of 2 of our 2023 predictions. So today we'll be revealing those and 4 further trends. More details to follow a bit later on how you too can work with us on these such events. In terms of webinar guidelines for today, please keep your sound on mute and your camera off if you're not speaking. All of the details will be pasted in the chat by my colleagues Joe, Danny and Rachel, and please do post any questions you have there yourself throughout today's webinar. We'll have a discussion lasting roughly around 45 minutes, going through each trend one by one before we move on to the audience Q&A at the end. A recording will also be sent round to everyone after today's session. So here are our industry experts speaking to today. So we'll ask them all to briefly introduce themselves first, and we'll start please with Jessica.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for having me. I'm Jessica Gillingham. I'm the founder of Abode Worldwide. We're a specialist public relations and content agency working with technology, brands, and large-scale operators in the lodging sectors, so short-term rentals, hotels, multifamily, and living, some of the living sectors as well. I'm really happy to be here, so thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And next up, we have Matt from Peerspace. Take it away, Matt.
Hi, my name is Matt Bendett. Thanks also for having me on the talk today. I'm the co-founder of Peerspace, and we are a marketplace that allows space owners to list their property for many different activities, meetings, events, film and photo productions. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about the trends that we're seeing today.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure to have you on. And last but not least, we have Sam from Lavanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Symons. I'm from Lavanda. So Lavanda is a SaaS, or software as a service platform for institutional real estate. We help institutional asset owners power flexible rentals within their portfolio. I am based in New York and lead our business development and growth efforts here in the US.
Thank you very much, Sam, and to all of our webinar speakers for today. So my first prediction for today is going to be speaking with Jessica about tech, but not for tech's sake. So for sake of context, I'd urge you to check out the recordings for 2 of our webinars. You can see there on the screen as well. I believe that we'll also be posting the links in the chat at the same time. Webinars that we've done in collaboration with Jetstream and Hopper Homes, as they will be relevant to this part of the discussion as well. We also covered some key acquisitions in the tech space happening between verticals as well, including the likes of Guesty acquiring Keygo and Hiram, and Aperto buying Stay My Way in the last 2 months. So welcome, Jessica. For my first question, so we're going to do a sort of 10-minute Q&A first on this trend with you. And something I want to discuss, and we were talking a little bit about it last week about this, in particular, the idea of best-in-class tech and exactly what that means. So when we talk about this particular concept, do you think property managers, are you finding that property managers want to have more choice of the tech solutions that they have, like within a PMS, for example, or do they want it chosen for them? What are your observations?
I think, Paul, that it really varies on the property manager and the business that they're running. And obviously everyone wants best in class. They want to have the best technology tools for their business, but it comes down to a few factors. It comes down predominantly to value. What's the best value for a property manager? And you know, we can talk about either bundling up technology, which is basically the PMS or the management operating system chooses the best revenue manager, the best guest communication tool, the best channel management tool, and offers that as the offering, or allows the choice, has a marketplace and has, you know, a property manager can choose whatever revenue management software works best for them, whichever digital guidebook works best for them. And there is so much choice in the marketplace. And as you know, you and I, we were both in Las Vegas, you know, last month or the month before, and you go to any kind of conference showroom these days, and there is such a vast array of different technology solutions on display and available. Some will come and go, and some will stick. And what's really interesting also is there's overlap, you know, there's overlap between the solutions of what they offer the property managers. So I don't think it's a simple answer of which is best. For some operators, having that choice taken away and having the PMS decide, right, this is what we think you should have, we're taking that choice away from you because we know best. For some that will work, you know, that works really great for, but for others who want the choice and want to really make sure that what they're buying into is exactly what they need, that's more important. And again, it comes down to cost and value. But also, you know, a point to make is that short-term rental property management is really complex. You know, property managers have completely different types of properties. They operate in different locations. There's all sorts of kind of nuances that makes one size fit all not always the right solution.
Mm. And based there on what you've said as well, what type of customers are you seeing tech companies trying to focus on more in the short-term rental space and perhaps moving forward? Do you see also on top of that more types of entrants coming into the market?
I think it's changing. It's changed over the last year. So I've been in short-term rental technology for a number of years now. And 2 years ago, the tech companies that I spoke with or that my company worked with, they were always very focused on more the enterprise property manager, the ambitious property manager, you know, more than 100 plus units, preferably more. That was really the key focus of the audience they were after. I'm seeing a change in this last year. There's been greater focus on the host market, the smaller property manager market, which, you know, a year, 2 years ago, no, you know, that was not the priority. But that market is a huge market, as we know, in the short-term rental sector. I think, you know, what is it, the Airbnb with the, you know, 6.3 million active listings, 90% of those are managed by individual hosts that have under 20 properties. So it's a huge market to kind of to be able to access. It's a really difficult market to access because these hosts are everywhere. They're influenced by different, different factors than the professional property manager. They're not at the conferences, or they're at different conferences. They're reading and being influenced by different sorts of media. But that sector is extremely, the long tail is one that I'm seeing the tech companies really focusing on now. Other new entries into the market, obviously, we'll hear more from Sam, but there's other kinds of flexible lodging coming into short-term rentals, multifamily looking at short-term rentals and adding that to portfolios. And then also realtors and estate agents looking at short-term rentals. So there's a broader audience today that the tech companies are focusing on.
You mentioned the Airbnb listings. I know we're going to come on to that in a future trend. So you're certainly ahead of the game there. But we've also sort of looked at the mergers and acquisitions happening within that context there. How do you think this illustrates how sort of competitive the short-term rental market space is now for tech, and are we likely to see more companies buying their way into other verticals?
Yeah, it's extremely competitive, and as I said sort of earlier, some of the solutions, they overlap what they're offering to their customers. So being able to really own that customer and own the relationship with the customer is key, really. And what we've seen over the last year is some of the tech companies, the ones that are getting funded, buying up into new verticals. So you mentioned Guesty and Hiram, they're buying into Australia there. They bought Yield Planet, they're buying into hotels. Aperto, recently purchased a company that would bring them into the hotel market. So we're seeing that kind of horizontal consolidation happening, as well as some of the tech companies buying up other tech companies. Guesty bought Kigo, Aperto bought VR Scheduler, so increasing the market share through consolidation. And in terms of the competitiveness, there are a lot of solutions out there. There are a lot of really, really good solutions out there. So if there's appetite and there's funding and it makes sense for a tech company to be looking to purchase another one, then absolutely that's a route to market.
Mm-hmm. And like you say, really, we could probably have quoted so many different acquisitions that we're seeing. I'm hearing a lot more rumours about acquisitions and mergers that we're going to see in 2023, particularly in the PMS and tech space. I want to sort of change the direction of the conversation a little bit as well and focus on loyalty. We look at, I guess loyalty is something that we discuss in hotels or in other verticals as well, but how do you see short-term rentals as still an emerging asset class? How is this particular vertical driving loyalty in different ways?
I don't know that we are just yet in this vertical, so it's really ripe for opportunity. One of the new exciting entrants into short-term rentals over the last year has been Hopper Homes. And it's a totally different OTA and way of generating business. I think that the loyalty and the subscription, these are two kind of similar but different things. There's a huge opportunity for short-term rentals to be there. And by learning from some of the other verticals, a lot of the hotel chains are instigating subscription programs for their guests in order to keep them loyal. For instance, Citizen M has a whole kind of membership program now. We obviously see Marriott with Bonvoy. Blue Ground also has loyalty and membership. Now, it's difficult within short-term rentals. Obviously, a lot of operators are small. It's costly to have a subscription or a loyalty program. However, being part of something like Hopper Homes or there are potentially some innovative ways that the short-term rental market can capture that loyalty and subscription trend. Now, you might sort of say, why do it? There is really valid reasons for doing it, because if you're able to to own your customer and have a relationship with your customer through subscription and loyalty, then you're ahead of the game. You know, it's about that relationship with the customer. And if you're also, one of the things with loyalty and subscription is that it's app-based. You know, we've seen Hopper Homes has got the app, and keeping customers within an app rather than going off and leaving the app, going to Google, looking for different things, means that your potential of losing that customer increases. So being able to own that customer relationship by offering loyalty programs, subscription programs, really does make sense. And I think we're not yet seeing it in this industry. It will be challenging because of the diversity and the amount of smaller players. But however, I think the innovation potential is huge here.
Thank you, Jessica. I've got one more question as well, because I guess as the industry innovates and professionalizes, I think there's still, perhaps you agree, perhaps you disagree, there are some perceptions out there that short-term rentals have some sort of issues with safety or security, and we certainly see some things getting highlighted in the news. Is this something that you agree with, or conversely, are you seeing tech being used for, you know, quality assurance, security purposes?
So it's a really interesting question, and I actually disagree. I think short-term rentals are really safe, and for the vast majority, they are a good experience. If they're not, then it's self-selecting in a way. It's very much peer-reviewed. So if an operator or a host is not doing a good job, then, you know, it gets found out, and those improvements have to happen. However, there is standard issues within the industry, and we are seeing technology. There's some really, you know, really great technology making sure that standards are there, you know, like for instance Breezeway with housekeeping app and housekeeping platform and things like that. There's lots of different technology that can help managers have a really process-driven professional service to their guests. There are other things that we're seeing in the marketplace: cybersecurity, payment or authentication, you know, different types of technology that really adds to that security and that safety. We've got guest screening, we've got InsurTech. So in terms of that technology ensuring that there is safety and security within short-term rentals, it's there. We're also seeing noise monitoring being used in terms of being able to make sure that short-term rentals are doing what they should do within their community. So technology can be useful for that. So in terms of the question, you know, are they dangerous or not? You know, the press loves to quote and to kind of, you know, publish the stories where there are issues or there's problems. They're few and far between. However, you know, underlying that is a need to make sure that standards, brand, experience, etc., are standardized and fit for purpose for the end user, as well as the asset owners as well, of course.
Thank you very much, Jessica. That really explained the first trend very well. So we'll come back to you hopefully for a bit of a Q&A later, but I want to move on to my second trend, which is about how we believe the affordable housing crisis will be the motivation for further regulations in the sector. So here are some stories to contextualize this trend, including the European Commission's data sharing partnership with the major OTAs in Europe, as well as the latest on incoming registration schemes in England and Ireland. So we believe that short-term registration schemes will start to be implemented in more destinations, whether that's in particular cities or even countries. We also predict that the European Commission will pass new legislation that levels the playing field for accommodation providers. That could be short-term rentals, comparing them with hotels and other verticals. We also believe that regulations are essentially inevitable. The challenge ultimately is going to be how strictly regulators enforce them and how they encourage compliance. Now, for our predictions article coming out on Thursday, we've talked to a number of experts from Europe and from the US and further afield. So we'll be getting a wide variety of opinions. Without short-term rental community engagements, we believe that regulations will be reactionary and driven by fear. Some of the things that we've seen on Airbnb, for example, about parties being over, company enforcing a permanent ban on those over the last year as well, are only set to enhance the scrutiny on the sector as it becomes more professional. And for our third trend as well today, moving on from that, we're going to shortly be hearing from Matt, but the overarching trend, we believe, is that rental spaces will be more diverse, more user specific and more flexible than ever before. We've got a couple of examples up on our screen right now. We will also be exploring a little bit about what exactly a short-term rental is. Is it what may traditionally have been known as being 30 days or under? We're now starting to see more and more companies call themselves super short-term rentals, or is a short-term rental even more of an extended stay than it used to be? It all ultimately means something different to different people. The new types of categories of lodging people are staying in, and the alternative platforms such as Peerspace that we're going to be hearing from, to major OTAs where people are renting out spaces for different purposes such as events, company offsites, filming, and much, much more. So that's just a couple of examples there that we have up on our screen for you. I'd like to bring in Matt as well. We've had our introduction there from Matt before, but Matt, you're with us at the moment? If you can just
here I am.
There we are. Matt, delighted that you can join us today for our short-term rentals trends webinar. And I've got to say, I'm really fascinated by this trend that we're going to be talking about, because it's Peerspace, perhaps to some of our audience, is not so well known already, but it's a business that I've been following for a long time now, since your launch in the last couple of years. I know you're going global as well, so we'll hear more about that. But ultimately, your first question, what is your prediction for a trend in 2023 that is going to be most relevant to Peerspace?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I think what you were saying about short-term rentals, really important to understand the legal distinction versus how you might casually talk about them, because they are regulated in different areas, right? And what you were saying about whether a space needs to be a 30-day plus rental or not is tied into the law around how it's defined as a transient occupancy space or something like that. So just right off the bat, what I want to make clear about Peerspace is we're a platform that we don't really consider it to be a short-term rental. You're actually sharing your space temporarily when you book. Now, can many short-term rental properties, property owners, enterprising rental income property owners partake in Peerspace? Absolutely. Is there a lot of overlap between your Airbnb host and your Peerspace host? For sure. And is it a platform that they can adopt easily? Yes. So want to kind of make that distinction, but I think what that allows for people who do have short-term rentals to think about is the shift that we see occurring in Peerspace, where it really opens up the potential for additional income streams from hosts that are used to providing a short-term rental experience. We're seeing hosts who are maybe listed on hospitality sites that are also looking to generate income in new ways. They might be compelled to try out a site like Peerspace and see that there are people booking all the time for photo shoots, for meetings, for a wide variety of events, and they're doing so on an hourly basis. So I think that that's an interesting trend that we're directly seeing, where it's becoming about more than overnight accommodation, more than travel. It's really about having memorable experiences and welcoming people who are looking for a unique space to have that memorable experience. And of course, there is an income potential that comes along with that.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've covered on that context slide, for example, before, there's probably too many stories or companies that I could explain in some detail. But on our trends event last week, we were discussing about how companies are now being set up to rent out pools for people, or how Airbnb is launching more categories now that for all sorts of different homes. And I think this is sort of slightly moving more perhaps in reaction to alternative platforms like Peerspace, for example. So what do you, on top of what you've already said, what opportunities do you see for hosts moving forward in 2023 and being able to get that revenue coming in?
Sure. So hosts, first and foremost, will have more opportunities to maximize the utility of their space, to, find those gaps in vacancy that they can facilitate through an hourly, project, something that might be 4 hours for a brand to come into your art studio or your loft or residence and film a piece of content that they will then in turn use for to market their products. And we see that thousands of times a month in some of our larger markets. And so I think it's really about giving hosts that opportunity where they can earn hundreds of dollars an hour, depending on what space you're listing and what activities you're taking, and really just unlock a lot of potential with their asset, which could be a commercial or residential property.
I definitely think completely agree with what you said there, and I think perhaps our traditional expectations of what a short-term rental is in terms of what type of lodging it could be, the type of length of stay, etc., is really expanding now, and that's definitely where I see you as a company coming in. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're expecting to see on the guest side of your business as well in the year ahead, or even further afield?
Yeah, we're continuing to see growing interest from the demand side, guests to use our space because of the flexible nature that they provide. Every space looks different. Every space is unique. Some are better for certain activities than others. A lot of on kind of the more commercial side, with the whole trend towards more remote or flexible work nature, we're seeing teams getting together in spaces for their offsites, for just co-working days, to really get strategy completed while they're together, so they can make the most of their time, and then going back to a work from home environment. So that's an interesting thing we're seeing. Let's just talk about weddings for a second. Weddings is a major global industry. And we have spaces for everything from, the proposal to like the surprise proposal, to the engagement party, to the wedding shower, to the wedding itself, to the family post-wedding brunch. You can find what you're looking for on a platform like Peerspace because of that sort of horizontal nature, where there's lots of different spaces to fit your needs. And so that's really what we're after, is trying to provide a more streamlined experience to discovering amazing spaces you wouldn't otherwise have access to, and allowing for these memorable life events to take place. So 2 examples, one commercial and one on the social side.
All right. If anyone on listening in today has got a wedding and needs somewhere to have that, then I think we know where to come now. So
Yeah.
Fascinating there, the different sorts of purposes that you're exploring and you're opening up to with opportunities. For perhaps some of the people who are tuning in today, who maybe list their properties or units on an Airbnb or a Vrbo, what would maybe be your advice, or what should they be considering when it comes to listing potentially on your platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I was saying earlier, the setup is very similar. I think an Airbnb or Vrbo host will take to the platform really well, understand how to, market, merchandise their listings, how to accept bookings, and provide a really attentive, hospitable experience during the conversion process from an inquiry to accepting this booking. Some small differences are obviously it's hourly, it's not overnight accommodation. So there are different ways for that day of experience to be really successful. Remaining on site during the booking is actually, highly encouraged versus something that you would not do. It's about being there to help them understand how to use the space while they are there using it. The turnaround time, that might be a little bit different. Typically with an overnight accommodation, you have a set amount of hours where you're turning the space over. On the positive side there, less work is involved to turn a space over when it's being used frequently or for a short duration of time. So yeah, I think it's really up to the prospect host, how they want to use their space, what makes the most sense for them, what kind of activities do they want. Some are more intensive than others and require a little bit more facilitation during the booking. But we give hosts the flexibility to decide that for themselves.
And my final question to you, Matt, as well, is what can we expect from Peerspace moving forward in 2023? Are these part of wider trends as well?
Yeah, so we've actually been around since 2014. We launched in San Francisco. Feels like ages ago. But we this past year plus has really been about expanding the Peerspace experience globally. And so we've launched in the UK, France, Germany, Australia, Spain, and we will continue to hopefully grow those markets and show that this business is something that can go across any different culture, expectations. I think that there's a global need for being able to find spaces like these and use them in a different way than your traditional event venue. So expect to see more of that. And then on the product side, we're really cranking. The team is really excited about the value that we think we can create with the software, continuing to add value to the host's life, make it easier for them to conduct business on the platform. We've got mobile apps on Android and iOS, as well as on the desktop, and continuing to add conversion driving features for them. So, it's really just about continuing to improve upon this platform that we've built, stay close to our supply, our hosts, and, ensure that we're driving as much value to them as possible. And some new fun things that are coming up, which I can't talk about, but check the website in the next week or so. And you'll see that there's a lot of change going on. So I think we're ending 2022 on a great note, and next year is going to be a fun one for us.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Matt, I should say. And I certainly hope that you'll be sharing more news with us moving forward. And I'm sure I join a lot of other people on the session today, that we hope to hear more from Peerspace in the future. I should say as well, just a reminder to everyone tuning in today, if you want to post any questions you have to any of our speakers today, then please do pop them in the chat and we will come back to them in a short audience Q&A at the end. So in terms of our fourth trend, I wanted to shift the discussion towards sustainability and ultimately how this discussion in particular is going to shift to stopping greenwashing. And for context, we can look back at some of the stories there that you see on the screen now about what organisations and online booking platforms such as Expedia Group are doing in terms of sustainability initiatives. And also I'd recommend checking out our webinar on the new era of smarter, responsible, sustainable tourism from September. And yeah, you can see a lot of various initiatives that are moving towards developing this conversation around sustainability. In terms of our predictions for the year ahead, we see frameworks for implementing sustainable practices and avoiding greenwashing becoming more robust in 2023. We also believe that consumers across the board will be increasingly selective about buying from companies that share their value. And this is probably something that everyone we've spoken to in preparation for our predictions piece, in fact, I believe Jessica was one of the people quoting on this. This is something that is widespread across the board that everyone is seeing and believing for the year ahead. We also believe that 2023 will be the year of the further shift towards sustainable action by the OTAs. We quoted what Expedia Group were doing with their sustainable initiatives, and also other organisations collaborating to have a more united action towards this particular issue. And this also follows on from this year's COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, leading into COP28 in Dubai next year. And finally, OTAs will modify their algorithms further to raise eco-friendly accommodations to feature higher in search results. So that is something we're already seeing. It's something we expect to accelerate in the year ahead. So next up, we have our fifth trend, and we're shortly going to be popping over to Sam from Lavanda to learn more about this. But ultimately, this trend boils down to how destinations will continue incentivizing digital nomads to encourage flexible living and working. So what exactly does this mean? In terms of our context today, we can see it's been a busy year for Lavanda, including raising $7.25 million to power its global growth, and also partnering with real estate developer Abode Properties to facilitate short-term flexible stays in the Middle East. That was back in February. On top of that, we'll be delving into some destinations as well, which are looking to attract digital nomads for a range of initiatives, including visas such as Spain and Mexico. But we could honestly quote a lot more countries that we're starting to see introduce these. So welcome, Sam, along to the conversation. Delighted to have you on board and also count on Lavanda's support for this webinar. Let's kick off the conversation by saying, how are digital nomads, in your opinion, being encouraged to visit, to stay in, to work remotely from different destinations around the world? What are you seeing them actively doing to attract this new demographic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 3 years have seen a pretty dramatic transformation in this space. And really what COVID did was it moved the kind of digital nomad lifestyle from being really something that was almost a unique, very niche kind of internet subculture of maybe freelancers or kind of e-commerce entrepreneurs into something that is now something that a really broad swathe of the population can access either fully or even partially, as corporations become far more flexible with how they're employing people, really. So what's happening is the corporations have moved first, and then the governments have moved to respond to that. And so they're recognizing the opportunity that digital nomads present, both in terms of tax dollars and in terms of basically spend that comes into local communities that they bring into different communities around the world. So in August, Spain just announced a digital nomad visa. There's a very attractive, 15% tax rate if you want to domicile some or all of your income in Spain, which, I mean, lots of people will do. And so very kind of well-heeled, expats coming over for a period of time, paying taxes in Spain. That's what they're really looking to attract. And really, they're not the first to launch visa schemes like this. Mexico, Barbados was very early on in the pandemic, launching a similar scheme to attract these types of individuals, and Croatia and Portugal. So anywhere kind of with, a nice beach, nice weather, and a low cost of living. I feel like that's kind of the holy trinity of these digital nomad havens. So governments are really responding to what's really becoming a broad-based trend and trying to incentivize individuals to move to these locations and, kind of capture the market and be a first mover here.
Thank you, Sam. I believe all of the companies represented on this panel today all embrace remote or flexible working schemes to different extents as well, certainly from the conversations I've had with each of you. But, from your perspective, Sam, what are you seeing in terms of, on another scale, like major corporations? Are they embracing nomadic or working lifestyles or policies moving forwards, and why do you think this might or might not be the case?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it really does depend on the industry. Obviously, there's some industries like manufacturing where it's very hard for a production facility to move to remote work, but certainly there's a lot of companies, especially more where jobs can be done remotely. And so I don't think anyone was really surprised to see companies like Facebook, like Google, like Airbnb really change over the pandemic their how they kind of the structures which they permit their employees to kind of adapt in terms of being more flexible with when they're in the office and when they can be fully remote or be out of the office. A trend that I thought is really interesting is actually, it's not the tech companies, but seeing some of the more legacy businesses and businesses that have been around for a really long time starting to open up and embrace this as well. So the best example I've seen of this is a company called, Allianz, who's basically financial services and insurer in Germany, massive company. They've been around for 100 years. You wouldn't really put them in the same category as a Facebook or an Airbnb in terms of being, really chomping at the bit to change in this way. But they are. And so they've launched this big kind of ways of working protocol, which is kind of a broad set of broad overhaul of basically their expectations for employees about when they have to be in the office and when they can work remote. But I think what's most interesting about this and stuck out to me was they actually permit 25 days a year, or basically 1 month a year, you can work from out of your home country. So they're giving you the green light explicitly to, in the winter, if you're in Berlin, go to Tenerife and spend a month in Tenerife or something and work remotely for that period of time. So that's something that I think is really interesting, is to see some of these more kind of older corporations also embracing this in a way that may not be full-fledged, but still contributes massively to the kind of excitement and the growth around this sector and this lifestyle trend.
Thank you. We talk about flexible rentals as well. I know you work with some of the major landlord players in the industry as well, for example, Greystar. But when we talk about flexible rentals, what does a fully flexible rental actually mean or entail, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for us, the way that we view it is ultimately about giving the consumer choice. And so if you picture an apartment, it's about the consumer can choose how they interact with it and how long they stay. In an ideal world, and we actually have this with a portfolio we've launched with Greystar, which is one of our major partners globally. And so we have about a 3,000 unit portfolio called Bicasa. And basically with these apartments, you can book them for any length of stay. In the past, hotels and apartment buildings were two very separate asset classes. And really what we're doing with Greystar is helping to power the blending of them together in a single asset. So a resident can walk into one of these buildings and they can pick any unit and they can book it for a day, they can book it for a week, or they can book it for a year or 2 years. And there's an associated price point and associated kind of leasing journey and set of requirements for each of those different for each of those different lengths of stay. So yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's about giving the consumer, again, the choice to pick, what level of commitment they basically want to make to the building in terms of matching best with what their lifestyle is and what their needs are at that point in time. Greystar is obviously kind of ahead of the game. No surprise there, as they're really a leader in global multifamily. But what's also really interesting is other really significant capital allocators that are doing similar concepts. And so Nuveen, Brookfield, AXA, all of these, some of the largest real estate capital allocators in the world are also piling money into very similar concepts in different markets and regions around the world as well. So that's definitely a trend to watch in the future.
Yeah, and because your role in particular involves expansion in the US market, so I wonder what the sort of angle you can provide about. Are you seeing more multifamily owners actually trying to incorporate and embrace these flexible rentals within their assets?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd split it into two forms. So one is pure short-term rentals, so anything less than 30 nights. And then the other is mid-term rentals. So taking short-term rentals first, I think multifamily in the US has been very quick to actually embrace this change. Initially with companies like Sonder and Casa, who have built great brands and great businesses over the past kind of 5-6 years. But what the trend that we're seeing is that multifamily asset owners now want to do that themselves, and so they actually want to they're their assets, and so they want to internalize these flexible rental operations and actually run them in-house themselves and reap the benefit and the additional income that comes from doing so. And so that's a massive trend on the short-term rental side that we're seeing. And then in terms of midterm rentals, again, a lot of depending on the market, but markets like Austin, markets like Denver or Miami, I don't think there's a single multifamily asset owner that isn't interested in incorporating at least midterm rentals in their building because of the yield uplift that you can get from going to a more flexible length of stay. Sometimes that's more on an actual what you call kind of basically a furniture on demand model, where the apartment is actually empty until the consumer specifies otherwise, and then a furniture pack is kind of airdropped in just in advance of their arrival. So they have a furnished apartment. Other times, it's kind of furnished and it's dedicated to that purpose from day one. But again, if you look at the capital being raised in this space, Landing obviously raised 125 million in August, huge round. Marriott just announced that they are launching a extended stays apartment brand, which again is effectively midterm rentals, so 30 nights plus midterm corporate rentals. So a lot of very significant players allocating capital or making big bets on the midterm rental space in multifamily. And I think that trend will continue in the year ahead for sure.
Excellent. Well, lots to unpick from that, Sam, and from all of our speakers now. So we've got just a couple of minutes I want to go through. We're starting to get a couple of questions come in as well, and we'll get hopefully a word from you all before the end as well. So Bob Garner from Environmental, who we've also actually quoted on our predictions piece to come out on Thursday, he's asked what responsibility do the leading companies feel what responsibility do the leading companies feel they have in our sector around sustainability? How can they best lead and bring others along with them? Is there someone who desperately wants to come in on that point there? Jessica, for example.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, I can answer that. Hi, Bob. Great question. And I think what we are going to find is that increasingly ESG will be an important business directive over 2023 and beyond. And by ESG, it will be sustainability and environmental issues, but it will actually be broader than that as well. It will be the social issues, the governance issues. As you know, in real estate, ESG is a huge factor, and capital investment is only being spent, certainly in the UK, when there is good ESG, there's green buildings, because for long term, it's very important. Now, we are pretty slow to adopt it in short-term rentals and across travel. Like obviously we have what Booking.com have done and various other quite sort of well-known initiatives that we've had around environmental and sustainability practices. I think that will only increase. However, big companies, they have P&Ls, they have to do things that make sense business-wise as well as morally wise. So I think that we will be seeing more, and it will be, what it would be lovely to see is for them to not just tell us what they're doing, but actually show us and put various kind of practices in. And as we know, and is that consumers are increasingly valuing companies that follow their own values, and are increasingly looking for companies that put sustainability as a forefront of what they're offering. Now that varies, it's more so in Europe than it is in the US. However, I think that's just going to increase. And we may have to be patient. However, we haven't got necessarily the patience here, but I think that it will increase the amount of focus that is on the sustainability agenda from the larger companies.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to Bob for the question. I'll just wait to see if there are any more questions that will come through, but we have got one final prediction to run through before we finish up and go into the last couple of slides. And the sixth prediction for 2023 is that supply and demand will remain stable and flexibility still rules for consumers. So what exactly, again, does that mean? For context, AirDNA, a trusted provider of short-term rental data, has provided some useful insights for us over the last year about the performance of short-term rental industries in the US and Europe, which you can see on the screen now, while Airbnb's listings recently reached a record 6.1 million as well. In fact, Jessica quoted that a little bit earlier as well. What exactly does that tell us as well? So we've got a couple of bullet points coming up on the next slide. We believe that short-term rental demand and supply growth will continue, but will be more stunted than 2022 levels. And there are a few reasons behind that as well. The US short-term rental industry, we believe, is poised for further growth as consumers prioritize travel. Demand may outpace supply due to the impact of increasing interest rates, energy, and labor costs, as well as tightening regulations. And we also believe that booking windows will increase, but guests will pay more for flexible rates as well. So there's a lot to unpick. There's a lot of data that we will be, this is just a little sneak preview of what we'll be talking about on Thursday. Thank you very much to AirDNA and Key Data for those insights as well. And you can read more when we release our article on Thursday. Before I go on to the final slides, actually, if I may, Sam, Matt, if I could just get one last pointer from each of you. I'll start with Sam. Is there anything that we haven't discussed today? Any further predictions that you expect to see in 2023 moving forwards as well?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. Got me thinking on my feet. I think the one thing that is on everyone's mind is just the economic headwinds that we're headed into, obviously, and how that will impact the short-term rental industry and the travel industry more broadly as a whole. One prediction I guess I have that we've seen in the past from COVID years, but I think will be replicated, is just, how this affects kind of the distribution of travel actually away from really expensive urban centers like London, like Paris, and more to more affordable, smaller kind of seaside towns and villages in the UK or, in Europe. So I guess that would be one trend that I think, if we head into a relatively significant, recession in the year ahead, expect that trend to proliferate yet again.
Thank you, Sam. That was good thinking on your feet there as well. And Matt as well. Anything else that you want to highlight particularly?
Yeah. I mean,
can expect.
I'll give kind of the flip side to that coin that Sam gave is really, I mean, this is what we see because our platform is sort of adjacent to the short-term rental industry, is people will be looking for continued ways to be enterprising, specifically in a recession, a looming recession. They've got these assets, they're valuable. They need to figure out ways to monetize them. And I think that they will be continuing to explore how to just create extra value, even if it's within short-term rentals. How can they be a better host? How can they appoint their spaces better? How do they win the booking when there's potentially flat to slightly down demand, if that's the case with a recession? So we certainly see that at Peerspace. And maybe this is just one last pointer for anybody who's interested in hosting, is it's important to get off on the right foot. It's important to provide that extra, quality experience and attention to detail as you're crafting your listing, so that you stand out. And I think that's really like any marketplace. You've got to find a way to stand out amongst your competition on the supply side to be able to win more demand. And so we might see some of that. There's been a lot of new supply coming into the marketplace when money was cheap and people were adding more and more income properties to their portfolios. I think that's stabilized for sure. But now there's a bigger pool of supply to compete with the demand. So really just depends on what happens with the level of demand, and hosts will have to adapt.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Matt. A big thank you to all of our contributors today for providing fantastic insights and backing out some of the big trends that we're starting to see in 2023. Big thank you to Jessica and to Sam from our session sponsors, Abode Worldwide and Lavanda, and to Matt from Peerspace. And don't forget to watch out for our 2023 predictions article out this Thursday. So we've just got a couple of quick slides I want to run through before we finish up today. That's it for our webinars in 2022, but don't fear, as we will be back on Tuesday, the 17th of January at 4 p.m. GMT. You can see up on your screen now. This session is called New Year, New Solutions, the Rise of the Rentalpreneur. Do join us then, and you can sign up in the chat now. And then in April, we've got our annual Shorties Awards taking place in London. Our entries period is open now, and I believe more details will be shared in the chat. We're also delighted to exclusively reveal and confirm that Verbo will again be a headline sponsor for our 2023 awards in April. And we've got a short video with some more details on explaining what you've got to do.
The Shorties are back for 2023, bigger and better than ever before. It was great to celebrate with you all at Skyline London in 2022, and for 2023 we're making it even easier for global STR professionals to enter or nominate others. There are 20 categories, including a new edition, the Rentalpreneur Award. Submit your no-cost entries now in as many categories as you wish by Monday the 6th of March. And now for something truly out of this world. We're delighted to announce that the Shorties will take place at the Orbit in London's Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. Mark your calendars for the 2023 Shorties on Wednesday the 26th of April.
So yes, we're very excited to take the Shorties to the Orbit in Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park on Wednesday the 26th of April. So do get in touch if you've got any more questions, and you can now start entering any of our 20 categories. For more opportunities to work with us, as Abode Worldwide and Lavanda are doing, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie, whose details are on the screen for you now. Big thank you again to our two sponsors for sponsoring and supporting this session. We're going to keep the session open for just another 2 minutes if you want to jot down anything, any details from the chat, anything that you've heard in today's conversation that you want to follow up on. Do contact us via our various channels you can see there. A big thank you once again to all of our fantastic speakers who tuned in today. Everyone in the audience as well who's supported our webinars today and throughout the year. And we hope you enjoy the festive season, and we'll see you again in 2023. Thank you, everyone.